Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leader Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and a leadership expert, and I'm so excited about today's topic because, believe it or not, I think a lot of people get really stuck when it comes to creating content in their business, and not necessarily the creation of content, but knowing what kind of content to create in order to generate revenue. You know, what kind of content you should create in order to actually get your audience to respond, how you can get them to engage, how you can get them to be motivated, inspired, and ultimately content that you can use to monetize your business and help you generate revenue and profit. So today's topic, today's deep dive is all about the kinds of content that you need to be creating, how you need to be creating it, why you need to be creating it, and what you actually want to be sharing that's going to help convert your prospect into paying clients. So it's a fairly big episode. We're talking like 25-30 minutes of just content knowledge bombs, if you like. Now, it's interesting because at the moment I'm batch recording. For those of you who don't know, the lovely Scott who produces the podcast is having a baby. Very, very excited. I'm very, very excited, and I'm not the one having the baby. But it means that obviously they're on baby standby at the moment. So Scott came to me and said, Jess, would you mind batch recording some podcast content? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it got me into thinking about how we start creating content in our business, and actually the realities of doing it, because sometimes we can have content that we batch record or that we batch create and that we can put out consistently that can do the job on an automated basis, i.e. it's going out, it's finding us leads, it's generating revenue on an automated basis. And sometimes the content has to be a little bit more live, and it all really depends on what the purpose is that you're looking to achieve. So as I sit down, I'm recording this episode just before I have a glass of wine, actually. It's been a really, really interesting week for me. I've been sat with clients, so I did a couple of amazing day intensives with some incredible clients this week at one of my favorite hotels in London. And so actually we've been talking a lot about, or I feel like I've been talking a lot this week, about messaging, about content creation, about cash flow, sales strategies, and all that kind of good stuff. And then as I was coming home yesterday, so I was making my way back from London, I actually was involved in an incident on a train. So to put it into perspective, I'm 5'3". That's me being generous. I'd probably say I'm 5'2.5", but I was wearing shoes with a sort of semi-heel on them. And I was on this train coming home from London, and there was a chap on there. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and he'd obviously been drinking. And him and his girlfriend were having an argument. So they were arguing on the train for about 30 minutes. And then we went past a specific stop, and this chap got particularly irate. And he started really screaming at his girlfriend on the train. And he grabbed her wrist and threatened to hit her. At which point, little old me steps up and says, hey, that's not very nice, and I don't think you should be doing that. Now, in a normal situation, I'm pretty sure it would have been fine. Unfortunately, this chap was particularly drunk, and I looked like a busybody because I am a bit of a busybody. And so instead, what he actually did was decided to throw me onto a train table and, say some not very nice things. And it all kind of culminated in, some really annoying visits to the hospital to check that, I wasn't too battered and bruised, some police statements and all this kind of thing. And actually just really threw my day out yesterday. The other thing, however, that it did was made me think, actually today I'm not going to be able to show up for my audience. And today I'm really glad that I have a team that's really supportive and that can go in and can explain the situation to my communities, but also B, that I do create some kinds of automated content every week that people can consume in my communities, for my email list, for my poddies. And also that once the experience had happened, once I'd kind of calmed down and stopped feeling so dramatic about it all, I could explain the situation and I could use that as a piece of content with a learning lesson attached, all right? So not a pimp your pain for profit kind of piece of content, but actually the learning lessons behind it. And if you want to see the post I wrote about that, you can go and check it out in the Facebook group. It's all about, the post itself is called, Do You Stand for What You Believe In? And it's got a really good response actually. So have a look at that as a piece of content that explains a learning lesson from a live experience. All right. So it's been an interesting week, and it really highlighted to me this week, having spoken about content so often, having been asked lots of questions around messaging, around polarizing, around how content plays into your sales strategy. And then, of course, having this experience and thinking, oh, goodness, actually today I just want to get home. I want to watch Netflix. I want to just, cry to my mum a little bit about people being mean to me. And it made me really glad that I have a key content strategy. And so I wanted to share that with you guys, because the thing about content, I think the thing that we see so often when it comes to entrepreneurship is that the myth seems to be you need to have tons and tons and tons of content, and it all needs to be new, and it all needs to be organic, and it all needs to be happening all of the time. And the reality is actually very, very different. And so regardless of whether you have an automated content strategy, a live content strategy, or if you're like me, you have a mixture of the two, what I really want you guys to do is to have a clear plan of what kind of content you're going to create and how it's going to lead your customer on a journey to help them buy from you, and help them know, like, trust you, build that relationship with you, and actually enjoy spending time consuming your content and having it help them make a later buying decision. So the first thing that we need to do when we're talking about content, when we're thinking about what kind of content we want to create, we have to first decide on consistency. Okay. Now, this is a really interesting one. When I started out in the online world, and even now, when I look at some of the people that I admire online, some people that I respect online, some people that actually just pop up all the time and we kind of move in similar circles, but I have no particular feeling about, show up online, we see this every day, 24 hours, content is always being created strategy. And I'm not really that kind of person. Okay, I'm somebody who's a little bit more chilled out about life. I don't necessarily want everybody to know the ins and outs of my personal life. I want to have free time where I don't have to be on social media. I don't have to be on, so to speak. And so actually, when we look at content strategy, the first thing we really have to look at is our schedule. How consistently do we want to be putting out content? Where are we going to be putting it? When are we going to be putting it out? And is it going to work around the life that we want to build for ourselves? Because remember, when you're building your business, you're not building another 9 to 5. You're not building another job that you're going to really resent in a year or 3 years or 5 years' time. You're trying to build a business that is going to support the lifestyle that you want. And everybody's lifestyle is different. So for me, when I look at my content schedule, it's changed drastically over the last 3.5 years. When I first started out, obviously time was the one thing that I had on my hands. I didn't have money when I started. I had my 3-month savings to pay my bills, and that was it. So I didn't want to be going out and spending tons of money on lead generation. I wanted to focus on how I could do it organically. And that meant spending time creating content that was engaging, that was polarizing, that was controversial, and that attracted my ideal clients over to places like my email list or my Facebook community where I could build deeper relationships with them. So when I first started my business, I was creating lots and lots of content. And actually, when I first started, I was blogging. I was a blogger, and I would write numerous articles for different publications. I had my own blog. I was writing regularly on social media. Writing was just the thing that I really enjoyed doing. And it was really easy for me to create lots and lots of written pieces of content and repurpose those pieces of content into other pieces of content. So it became something that I could do pretty much every day. And I did, when I started out, when I was sat at my kitchen table with my iMac that I just bought, sat on my kitchen table looking at my post-it notes, trying to remind myself of what I wanted to do, I was emailing 2 to 3 times a week to my list. I was putting out content on social media, so written content either on Facebook, on Twitter, daily. I was creating tons and tons of new content. And as time went by and I started to get more clients, I started to reuse my content and really think about the consistency with which I showed up. So for example, when Facebook Lives came out, that was amazing. I was like, this is absolutely brilliant. I can show up. I can do a ton of live content. It can be organic. It can be new and fresh. But I did over 400 hours worth in the year that Facebook Live came out, 400 hours worth of free Facebook Live trainings. Now that set me in really good stead for the rest of, time, basically, because 400 hours worth is an awful lot of content. But it actually took up huge, huge amounts of time. And despite being consistent, of showing up at the same time pretty much every day, Monday to Friday, it started to take me away from client work, from sales activities, from other things that I needed to do that were going to help me build my brand and build my credibility. So when we're talking about creating this content, you've got to be responsible for the schedule, and you've got to decide how consistently are you going to show up, when, where, and how. Okay. So for me, the places that I like to create content for and the places I like to show up are obviously on the podcast twice a week. I show up in my Facebook group daily, and I send content out to my email list. If I manage to get content out onto any other platforms, i.e. Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, anything like that, usually it's live content. It's something that I'm reacting to in real time. And it's not something that I have those platforms aren't somewhere that I have a specific content strategy for the majority of the time, because they're not where my core client base comes from. Okay, they're not where I'm spending the majority of my time. LinkedIn as well, actually, I spend an awful lot of time on LinkedIn. So 2 to 3 times a week, you'll see an update from me on LinkedIn. I'll engage with other users, all of that kind of thing. So that's the first thing that we look at when we're looking at creating content, is actually when are we going to show up and where are we going to show up? The second thing that we have to look at is how we're going to show up. Okay, so this is where you think about what kind of medium are you going to use. Now, as I say, my mediums and consistency changed massively from day one in my business to whatever today's current number is. I would imagine it's somewhere in the 1,000 sort of stage. But you will be able to change mediums, and you will be able to change styles and platforms if you want to, but it's good to pick between 2 and 4 to start out with and to really focus on. So again, for me, medium, I love audio, I love video, and I love writing. And so depending on how willing I am to put makeup on each day will depend on how much video content I'm going to create. Audio content I'm forever creating, and I batch create a lot of audio content. So a lot of the guest episode podcasts, for example, are recorded in advance because it makes it easier for me. It means that we can plan out content. It means that I'm not having to worry if I go away on holiday. And then obviously I'll look at social platforms. So Facebook and LinkedIn are my social media platforms of choice. Now, you've obviously got to think about, when it comes to how you show up and where you show up, it's about what do you actually enjoy? Okay, so I really do enjoy live engagement. I enjoy engaging with my community in real time. It means that I can answer questions quicker. It means I can troubleshoot things. It means I can genuinely have a really fun time with my audience. And so for me, live video was it was kind of pivotal for me in terms of my business, not just in terms of how it meant that I showed up with my audience and the relationship I was able to build with them, but also in terms of the profit that I was generating. Because I was enjoying it, I was able to do more of it. And because I was doing more of it and I was creating more content and I was engaging my audience regularly, people were buying more often, right? So it makes sense. If you're not a video person, you might be an audio person. You might be somebody who really loves podcasts. And it might be that you create your own podcast and that you do it twice a week, 3 times a week. If you are John Lee Dumas-esque hero style, you might do one every day. All I will say is that it will be a lot of work. But you really have to think about how you want to show up. And remember that there is nothing wrong with the medium that you choose. I think at the moment there's this tendency in the online world to start thinking, oh, well, blogging's really passé. Now that we've got video and lots of social media platforms are prioritizing video, I should be doing that. And the reality is that if you're not comfortable on video, if you're somebody who finds it incredibly uncomfortable to show up on video, you don't enjoy engaging, you get nervous and panicky and scared, that's what's going to come across with your content. And so actually it's not going to be enjoyable for you to create in the first place. And it's not going to be enjoyable for your audience to watch, because they'll be able to feel how uncomfortable you are, and it will put them off engaging with your content. It will put them off doing more. So really, when you're thinking about medium, pick the medium that you like. Don't pick what everyone is telling you to go for. And I know that this can be tricky because, we're living in an age where new technology is coming out every 5 minutes. We've had Periscope, we've had Snapchat as different platforms that are focused on snippets of information and quick information. And then we obviously have had things like YouTube, which is a platform which is much more able to cater for longer pieces of content. Podcasts, Gary Vee came out last year, just before I launched my podcast actually, and said, if you want to connect with your audience, you need to be in their earbuds. And I remember simultaneously thinking, woohoo, I'm validated, starting a podcast was the right idea. And also, bloody hell, Gary, why did you tell everybody? Now everyone's going to be setting up podcasts, and I'm just going to be in a saturated market full of sales podcasts and nobody will want to listen to mine. So you really have got to look at not what the new hot medium is, but what you actually enjoy and how you like engaging with your audience and how frequently. And when we talk about engaging with your audience, this is also something that's really, really important. You might be somebody who doesn't necessarily enjoy engaging with your audience in real time. If you're a podcaster, I tend to get emails from people who listen to the podcast, or they'll come into my Facebook group and they'll ask a question, and it's great and I love it. But generally it's they're communicating, or you guys are communicating with me in a way that lets me respond in my own time. Okay, so if you send me an email, I can get back to you within 24 hours and I don't feel bad about that at all. In fact, I'm really excited to get back to you, and I'm really excited to give answers to questions and things. Whereas actually, for somebody who doesn't necessarily like engaging in real time, or is maybe a little bit more nervous, something like live video is terrifying, because what if somebody asks a question and you don't know the answer? What if you have to say publicly, oh, I don't know, I'm going to go away and find that out for you and tell you tomorrow? That can put people in a really uncomfortable situation, and it can push them out of their comfort zone. And again, when you're out of your comfort zone, sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it pushes you forward, sometimes it motivates you, but sometimes it makes you uncomfortable. And again, that's when your audience can see it, they can feel it, and it puts them off as well. So, when you're thinking about the medium, really think about where you are comfortable, how you're comfortable showing up, and what kind of content you like creating, rather than what's hot on the algorithms right now. And the same thing is when it comes to platforms, okay? We're always going to have new social media platforms. I would anticipate that over the next 5 years, we will have at least another 5 important social media platforms that pop up that we use, depending on how successful they are, for 5 minutes or for the full 5 years, it doesn't matter. The important thing when you are thinking about the content that you're producing is, where do you want to put it? Where do you enjoy showing up? And actually, where are your ideal clients? So for me, my ideal clients have always been on LinkedIn, they've always been on Facebook, and they've always been listening to podcasts. So those are the 3 platforms that I show up on. Yeah, okay, I've got 6,000 followers on Instagram or something. But in all honesty, I don't engage on there so often. I post pictures of my dog. I will post pictures of holidays. Instagram is, the things that I'll post, it's live, and it's generally the behind the scenes, what's going on in my real life. The platforms I actually focus on showing up and giving serious value to my audience are the ones that I know my audience are hanging out on and the ones that I'm actually enjoying showing up on. Whether that content is automated or whether it's live really makes no difference. It's going to be put in front of the right people, and it's going to have a message that either really appeals to them and makes them think, have to work with Jess, or repels them and makes them realize, actually, Jess is completely not for me. So when you're thinking about your platform, think about, where do I enjoy showing up? What's the platform that I find easiest to use and the most enjoyable to use myself? But also, where are my ideal clients? I've had clients in the past who've run Facebook groups for a long, long time and have come to me and gone, I just get nothing out of it. I'm not getting any sales. I'm not enjoying it. And when we look at why they set up a Facebook group, they go, well, everyone else had one, so I thought it would be the best place for me too. And when we move them over either to a different platform or a different style, it becomes much easier. Perhaps their jam is LinkedIn. Perhaps it's, putting videos on YouTube. Perhaps they are absolutely nailing Instagram. But again, it's about how you feel comfortable showing up and about knowing that the ROI is there. If you're going to spend tons of time creating content for a specific platform, it has to produce a return on investment, a return on your time at some point. And I always tend to give it a month for that to happen. If I've been doing something consistently for a month and it hasn't led to any leads, or it hasn't led to any sales, or it hasn't improved my engagement in some way, I will go and I will try and find somewhere else, and I will try and find something else that works better and quicker. Because ultimately, I don't want to be spending all my time on something that's fruitless and that makes me feel despondent about the growth or about the results that I'm seeing. Okay. And then when we think about content, we have to think about what kind of content that we're going to be sharing. Now, I'm going to do an episode specifically on how I brainstorm all of my content ideas and how I get like 6 months worth of content in about 15 minutes. I'm going to do that as a separate episode because it needs a little bit of time and it needs more notes to go through, and it's a separate topic all of its own. But in terms of content that you can be putting out there immediately, I want you to start thinking about the categories that you need to be using in order to get your audience really ready to buy. Okay, so the categories that I always tell my clients to think about and break their content down into are motivational. So what kind of content can you be putting out that's motivational or inspirational for your clients? And again, if you're somebody who's an aspirational seller, so if you're somebody whose clients look up to you and they're looking at your lifestyle, or they're looking at a transformation, a specific transformation that you've achieved that they want to achieve, putting out motivational, inspirational, and aspirational content is going to be key for you. Okay, so showing the transformation, whether that is your laptop on your knee on the beach, getting sand in the keyboard, drinking cocktails and doing all that good stuff, or whether that motivational content is actually a bit of a kick up the backside message, like the kind of motivation that Gary Vee delivers. He's very much, if you want something, go get it. Time is now, let's go. Or Goalcast produces some amazing videos with inspirational stories of people who've just done incredible things despite facing adversity. So there are lots of different types of motivational content that you can put out there, but you want to be thinking, what kind of content can I create that is going to motivate my audience to do something? What kind of motivational content is going to help them feel inspired to take action, to change today? The second category that you want to be thinking about is controversial content. And this is always, when I talk about controversial content, people always assume that I'm talking about negative content. What can you find that's terrible about your industry? What do you really stand for? What myths do you believe there are? And some of those things can come across as being negative, and we can fall into this trap of thinking that polarizing means finding negative things and talking about them to incite rage and anger and negative feelings. Actually, controversial content and polarization can be a positive thing. You can talk about the things that are done differently or that you do differently that work better for your audience. So for example, one of my very good friends is an amazing osteopath in London. And the thing that he is really, really well known for, many other osteopaths do not do. So my friend Jonathan is an amazing osteopath because he works specifically with cases that other people haven't been able to solve. And we call him magic hands, because honestly, you can go to him with a problem, any problem, and he will fix that problem for you in 1 or 2 sessions. And it's amazing. Now, as a result, it means that Jonathan perhaps doesn't have clients in the packages that other osteopaths might. He doesn't sell people into, you're going to have to come to me for at least 8 weeks before you see any changes. You're going to have to do this and that. He brings people in. He, does 1 or 2 sessions. They feel amazing, and they pop back for top-ups and things, but he's not selling them into these long 6 to 8 week packages. Now, that's a really good example of positive polarization. If you're somebody who's been struggling with a really painful issue for a long time and nobody's been able to fix it, knowing that you're in the hands of somebody who's not just looking at their bank balance, but is actually looking at, how can I solve this issue? How can I remove this pain for you as quickly as possible? And polarizing the industry in that way is a really, really good thing. And it's very controversial. It's something that's very different in the industry. It's something that stands out. And when we talk about controversy, when we talk about controversial content, we're talking about content that goes against the grain, that goes against what is being put out there day in, day out, and it's providing a different perspective. Okay, so think about what is controversial. What do you really stand for? Are there any myths in your industry that actually you don't agree with? Are there things that are going on that you think are a bit shady, slimy, sleazy, gross, or icky? Or are you positively polarizing? The things that you do that is really different, or that are really different to what usually happens in your industry? Are there things that you find really exciting, new changes that are happening, perhaps new regulations being brought in that you think are going to be a really, really good thing? And you're taking a controversial stand on that because it's positive, okay? The third category is educational content. Okay, so this is your kind of how-tos. This podcast, for example, is a great example of educational content. Every single week you get a deep dive training on how to do something like create content, like get visible, like run a sales call, all of those kinds of things. It's educational. It's easy to understand. It's broken down. It's something that is actively teaching you a lesson of some kind. Equally, the deep dive guest episodes each week are answering questions. So it's educational in a way that demonstrates, A, everyone feels the same. We all have the same issues when it comes to sales, marketing, that kind of thing. But also, B, it gives everyone a clear plan of, if you are suffering from the same issue, this is how you can go and fix it. So start thinking about what's educational, what kind of educational content do you want to be putting out there, and how do you want to deliver that? Is it through a podcast? Is it through a webinar? Is it through a challenge? These, again, they're all different mediums. They're all mediums you can use. But when you're using, or when you're thinking about educational content, it becomes easier to use different mediums. You have a wider availability. The fourth kind of content is actionable content. And this is, for me, actionable content can be super short. It can be a tweet saying, how to make more sales, ask for referrals. That's actionable content. Go out, ask more referrals, you're going to get more clients. Simple. Okay, super, super simple. Actionable content doesn't have to be something that's video. Typically, actionable content are things like the cheat sheets that we provide at the end of every deep dive episode. If you go into the show notes, you join the member portal for free, you can download the cheat sheets from every single deep dive training episode. And those are actionable pieces of content. They give you fillable forms. They ask you certain questions that help you go out and take action in your business, that help you achieve something immediately. So think about, are you giving out actionable tips every day? Are you giving your audience cheat sheets, blueprints, things that they can go out and take action on immediately and see results? And then finally, I've put it under the category of entertaining, but really I mean be human. Okay, so the fifth category when it comes to content creation is about being a human, being authentic, being you. And what I mean by that is that people like seeing the whole of you rather than just the glossy business front. So earlier on, I was talking about if I use Instagram, it's purely a behind the scenes platform for me. It's a, hey, look, I just went skiing on holiday and it was awesome. Or, hey, look, we went to the Christmas market and this is my really nice cup of mulled wine and I love that. Or, hey, look, I'm at the beach and it's April and I've got my tootsies in the sea and it's bloody freezing, but I'm loving it. Okay. So you've got to think about what makes you human. What are you showing your audience that makes you a real person, rather than just a face behind a screen or the keyboard behind the blog. And that's really, really important. It doesn't mean that you necessarily do it on the same platform. I wouldn't, for example, go on LinkedIn and talk about my spa day or show pictures of it, because nobody would care and it would be a little bit awkward. It's a professional platform. Nobody really wants to see me in my towel there. However, I would do it on Instagram and I would do it on potentially Pinterest, because those are platforms where actually people are interested in the visual. They're interested in pretty spaces. They're interested in what's going on behind the scenes of the business. It's also something that you can use learning lessons and stories and experiences. For example, at the beginning of this episode, I talked about being attacked on the train, and a subsequent blog post that I wrote about it in the Facebook group that will be on the website. And it's not because I particularly want any sympathy. I mean, albeit I do have a massive, massive egg on my head, and a big bruise. And I always love sympathy for that kind of thing. But it's not about sympathy. It's about looking at, I'm a real person. These things happen. Life gets in the way. Talking about successes, talking about failures, and giving people a well-rounded view into who you are as a person, your values, what you like doing at the weekend, the kinds of places you want to go on holiday. For me, I'm very, very open about the fact that if you are a friend with me on Facebook, on my personal profile, or you follow me on Instagram, it's quite likely you will see at some point a video of me doing tequila slammers, or you'll see a photo of me on holiday in my bikini. If you do, I'm very sorry. But it's that kind of thing where that's my personal space. Those are areas or platforms that I'm using, not just to show the behind the scenes of my business, but just because actually those are platforms that my friends follow, that my family follow, that I will update those kinds of people on. And so if you are somebody who I'm connected with there, you're quite likely to see content that you perhaps wouldn't expect to see if you were in my Facebook group or listening to the podcast every week, because I'm a real human. And, as humans, we're 3D. You might see me comment on articles. You might see me tag, my boyfriend in things, or tag my mother in, funny cat videos, and all these kinds of things that you may not see if you're purely following me on a business level. So you've got to be thinking about, how are you being authentic for your audience? How are you showing them you're a real person without just pimping your pain for profit all of the time, without going, oh, I had a really awful week and, oh, here I am living in a van and da, 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 da. You've got to be looking at the things that make you tick as a person. One of my favorite examples of this is Heather Gray, one of my biz besties. She sends me things all the time that she knows will make me laugh, because her favorite thing is when I laugh hysterically, I do this kind of like snorting thing. So I'll laugh so hard that I just can't breathe, and basically I'll just snort like a pig as well. And it's obviously massively attractive. It's one of my defining features. But she thinks it's hysterical. So she will always send me things that make me laugh raucously, because she knows that I will always send her a Voxer and I'll be laugh snorting all the way. And it's something that, my clients see when they're working with me, on a close basis. It's something my members will see. And it's something that will often be out there on my personal profile, or that I will inadvertently do on a live stream when I'm teaching something. But it's not something that my audience necessarily shows up to see. It's just that when they do see it, they go, oh yeah, she's human, right? She's a real person. She does things that the rest of us do. Okay, so when you're thinking about content, and this episode is kind of the overview to planning it, understanding what kind of content to provide and where to put it, the next episode is more about, okay, how do you brainstorm content? What category does it fall under? How can you create 6 months of content in 15, 20 minutes? And believe me, that's a genuine time frame. When you're thinking about creating on content, we just need to think about 3 things. Your schedule, how consistently you're going to show up, where are you going to show up? And if you've got the Smart Leader Cell 90-day planner, that is going to remind you to create content. It's going to help you know where to put it. It's going to help you become an absolute content whiz and help you convert it into sales. So if you've got that, you are ahead of the curve. Then you've got to be thinking about your medium. What kind of content do you want to provide? How do you want to show up? Video, blogging, podcasting. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you choose a medium that you're happy with, and start thinking about whether you want to produce all live content, all automated content, or a mixture of the two. Personally, I'd recommend a mixture of the two just because it gives you a little bit more leeway, allows you to go on holiday whenever you want and keep producing content, but also gives you the ability to show people the behind the scenes of life and what is going on day to day. And you've got to think about the platform. Okay, what kind of platform are you going to use? Is your ideal client on it? Do you enjoy using it and showing up on there? And pick, like I say, 2 or 3. You don't need to be on every single platform. And we'll talk about that in the content specific episode, because, I agree with repurposing to a point. What I don't want people to do is feel like they have to be on every single platform. Otherwise, they might be missing out on the 2 people who are subscribed to their YouTube channel. You don't have to be everywhere. You have to be strategic with your content. You have to encourage your audience to follow you in key places so that they feel like you're omnipresent, not so that you're rushing around like some kind of headless chicken creating God knows what every day. All right. And then finally, think about the types of content that you should be sharing: motivational, controversial, educational, actionable, and entertaining. Your human content. Think about the kind of categories that you are putting content out at the moment. If you have too much how-to content, for example, people will just consume, but they'll never see you as somebody to buy from because they're not being motivated, they're not being inspired, they're not being challenged on their beliefs. So you do have to have something from every category that's going out regularly so that people can see you as a well-rounded business owner that they want to buy from. All right. So hopefully that's been helpful. If you've enjoyed today's episode, obviously make sure that you hit that subscribe button, leave a review. Let me know how you're feeling about the podcast. I always love it when people let us know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and give us feedback. It's always good. If you do have any questions about this episode, make sure that you pop into the free Facebook community, the Smart Leaders Sales Society, over on Facebook. You can ask any questions that you like there. And there's also free weekly live sales training over there too. So if you want extra Jess, you can come and see me in the Facebook group, completely makeupless, doing my laugh snorting. If that isn't an incentive, I don't know what is. It's been a great episode. Thanks for spending this Monday morning with me. I will see you on Friday with another epic entrepreneur.